Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Today is Tuesday, July 24th, 2018. And tonight's topic is when silver was the world's reserve currency. We're going to talk about two periods of time when silver was used globally during the Roman Empire and then later on in the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. So when silver was the world reserve currency, and we're going to take a look at two different types of issuances of silver and how they were different. And, well, you can decide which one might have been better. All right, but before we get into when silver was the world's reserve currency, let's take a look at what happened during the day. Not so much on the news front, but a busy day in the cryptocurrencies. But first, just take a look at the gold-silver markets. Gold managed to eke out a bit of a gain, closed at $12.24. Now remember, I was thinking that we might have hit a bottom in gold when we were down around $12.12. It looks like that might be the case. We'll still have to wait and see. Same with silver. Silver closed up a bit. Silver had also gone down to about, it might have been 15.28 and closed today at 15.46, which was also up. Now, the stock markets were mixed. The Dow was up almost 200 points, NASDAQ was down 1, and the S&P was down 1342. The US dollar index was flat, and the Chinese yuan continued to weaken against the dollar and other major currencies. All right, now, as to the cryptocurrencies, the story of the day and of the week is that Bitcoin has been the leader in the recent resurgence in prices over the last 10, 14 trading days. And Bitcoin now stands at $8,400. And the total market cap of cryptos is about 300 billion plus. And of that, Bitcoin is about 48%. It had dropped down into the 30s, but this recent rise in Bitcoin leading the cryptos out. So Bitcoin is at about 8,400. Ethereum hasn't done as well. It has not regained its peak from a few days ago, but is at 479. It had been well over 500. Bitcoin Cash is at 866. That's close to its recent high. EOS 860. Stellar is at 30 cents, and Litecoin is closing in on $90. So Ethereum and Litecoin have not hit their prior peaks from a few days ago, but Bitcoin has indeed soared higher. So Bitcoin leading the cryptocurrencies. Hard to say yet if this is a bottom. Remember that Bitcoin peaked in January or December around 20,000, had got all the way down to about 5,700. Had rallied back a couple of times, but still is on a downward slope unless this recent rally can continue to have legs. But still, even though we're at $8,400 right now, we're still down a significant amount since the early days. All right, now tonight we're going to talk about when silver was the world's reserve currency. Now, I had done an article, and I will link to them below when this gets uploaded. I had called the world's first reserve currency the pieces of 8, or the Spanish real de a ocho. And I had mentioned that that was an international currency for centuries. And I got a few comments saying, oh, no, you're wrong, you're wrong. The first international currency was the Roman Denarius. Now, even before I had written the world's first reserve currency about the pieces of 8, I had done a long article called The Decline and Fall of the World's First Silver Empire. And in that, I went through the various silver content of the denarius during the period of time of the Roman Empire. I'd done a video on it. Salivate Metal had done a follow-up video on it using my blog post. But there is a difference between the Roman denarius and the pieces of 8, and here's what it is. First of all, the Roman Empire I can never consider global. Had nothing to do with North America, nothing to do with South America, nothing to do with Southeast Asia, nothing to do with Australia, nothing to do with China. So even if the denarius was what I would consider a global currency, which I don't, a reserve currency, the Roman Empire wasn't global. It was the known Western world, but it was not global. All right, but let's go through what the Roman denarius was. Now, a lot of people like to say that silver is money, period. Not necessarily, because in Italian, gold, the word for money is gold. The denarius does mean money in Italian. The word denarius and gets modern translated up to Italian and Spanish into dinaro and denaro. And that is because the denarius was the basis of, but the denarius, if you know your Latin, it means 10, deca, right? Denarius, and it was a unit called an ass, not an ass, like a donkey, and it was basically 10 ass, or 10 asses. It doesn't mean you got 10 asses for one denarius. An ass in Latin is assinus, or a mule is mulus, but it's not assinus. I mean, asses. So a denarius would be broken down, would be considered a 10 ass, and that unit was a unit of value in Latin and generally thought to believe to be a pound of copper, which is interesting. Now, the denarius doesn't mean silver. Now, in French, the Latin word argentum switches over into French, into argent, and that means money in French. And then Argentina, because of they found silver in Argentina, in that part of the world, they called it Argentina. So the denarius is moved up to denaro, but in Italian they call money soldi, and soldi is because of the word solidus, which was a gold Roman coin. And we're going to rush ahead just now before we get into what happened to the denarius. As you all know, the Roman Empire fell in 476, but the eastern portion of the empire continued on until 1453. It was the eastern part, the Byzantium Empire. And in 498, the Byzantium Empire introduced the solidus, which was a gold 24-karat coin. And that was the basis for the monetary system for the next five centuries. So the Byzantium went with the solidus, and that's carried over into the word money. All right, now let's go back to what the denarius was and wasn't, and why I don't consider it the same type of global currency. The denarius was more of a fiat currency, and here's why. As the Roman Empire grew, the silver content in the coinage declined. So it wasn't the denarius was 10 asses based on the silver content. It was initially, but then yes, plata is money in Spanish, plata oro. And then what happened with the denarius was they started to take out a certain amount of silver, but still calling it a denarius, still calling it, saying it's worth 10 asses. And that was because the Roman Empire had lots of things to pay for, bread and circuses. And many people have made the comparison to Empire, United States, same thing. The debasement of the currency is that what happens when you really can't pay for guns and butter. So during the period of the Roman Republic and the early empire, the silver content in the denarius was 95 to 98%. But that silver content was always set by the emperor. So it's not a market setting. They're saying this is what the money is. It is somewhat, in a sense, fiat. It's backed by silver. But the denarius is given its value by what the emperor says it is. Just like United States silver coins were based on the fact that they had a certain amount of silver in them, the dime, the quarter, half dollar, dollar. But the government could issue them, as they did in 1965 with the new dates on them, and say, here are the new quarters, dimes, half dollars. So the government basically said, it's the same thing, whether there's silver in it or not. Now, the denarius came about in about, well, it was right before the Punic War. I think it was 211 to 10 BC, and it stayed with the empire for about 400 years. And it was the choice of metal until the Roman Empire fell, and then we had the solidus became the preferred coinage of the empire. Now, before we go on, I have a public service announcement I want you all to listen to, because back in the Roman times, there were also certain types of pottery, and they're still with us today, and they're worth considering. Ten reasons why you should buy a Smaulgld mug. Reasons to buy and hoard mugs. Number 1. Mugs have been used for drinking for more than 5,000 years. Number 2. They are finding more uses for mugs every day. Number 3. We could not live our lives without mugs. Number 4. The Russians and Chinese are buying mugs hand over fist. Number 5. Mugs are made in China. Number 6. Mugs are hard assets. Number 7. Mugs are real wealth. Number 8. Mugs cannot go to zero. Number 9. Mugs are portable. Number 10. Mugs are drinking vessels, period. Wait, there is more. You can mix Mountain House in a mug. You can carry your barter silver in a mug. You can do many things with mugs that you cannot do with fiat currencies. Measure your wealth in mugs. They have mugs at the offices of JP Morgan and central banks. That is all you need to know. When the excrement hits the fan, you'll want to have your Smaulgld mug close by. Buy your Smaulgld mugs today. All right, well, that was our advertisement for this evening. If you're interested in buying a Smaulgld mug, it does help keep the program going. But let's get back now to, and I've left a link in the chat box here of how you can get your Smaulgld mugs. Mugs were around during the Roman times. All right. Now, as we were mentioning, the denarius was the currency that was used to pay for the welfare warfare state. It was introduced around 211 BC, and it remained the currency of the empire for about 400 years. And during the time of the early empire and the late republic, it was always above 90%. And you can tell what's going to happen as the empire expands. They're going to start to reduce the silver content. But at the time of Caesar Augustus, which was the end of the empire and the end of the republic and the beginning of the dictatorship in 15 BC, the silver denarius was still 95 to 98% silver. And as the Roman Empire grew, its cost grew, cost of conquest, administration, military installations, border defense, walls. Then you had aqueducts to build, and then you had to keep the people amused, colosseums being built throughout the empire. Not, everyone knows the Roman Empire, but I've done some traveling. There's colosseums throughout Italy and throughout the rest of the Roman Empire. It wasn't just they built one colosseum. These were large arenas that they built all over the empire. All right, so the denarius, of course, started to be debased as time went on. And in the latter days of the Roman Republic, as we mentioned, we were at 95, 98%. And then, as Rome became an empire, they started to expand the areas. They moved into, they took over the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain, Portugal. The Romans moved into the British Isles. They moved further into Turkey. They made full conquest of the entire northern part of Africa. They went further east into Eastern Europe, and they basically just left off areas like Germany, Poland, Czech Republic. But for the most part, they had the entire western portion of Europe, all of Turkey, modern-day Israel, Jordan, Morocco, from Morocco all the way over to Egypt. And as they continued to move and expand the empire, the denarius continued to lose silver value. It went from 98% to 95% to like a sterling silver, then to 74 to 89%. And the Roman Empire had peaked in its its area that it had under control around 117 AD. And by 190 AD, it was in decline. And the denarius actually started to decline in silver content, probably 100 years earlier than the Roman Empire actually peaked. So they funded it based on, you would call it deficit financing, so to speak. But even so, the Roman Empire was still very large in 230, 250, 270, even though at that point, the denarius was now under 50%. So even though that the empire wasn't really shrinking yet in the 200s, the denarius had already taken the beating. And you could see in the course of history, while it was only a matter of time, that they had already overextended themselves, but they were hanging on, and you can hang on a lot longer than people might think, because in the 200s, there was still another 200 years left of the empire, even though by, I think it was about 270, they were down to 3% in the denarius. So this highlights my point that the denarius was more of a fiat currency because they did not stick to the silver content. It was basically whatever they wanted it to be. It was called the denarius. It was based on a base 10 system, but it didn't stay that way. Now, the reason I call the world's first reserve currency pieces of 8 was the 19th century, from the 16th century to the 19th century, the coin that they used for international trade. And it really was something that was considered what we call the gold standard, but it really was the coin that you would want and you would accept universally. So when they found gold and silver in the Americas in the early 1500s, mostly Spanish conquistadores, and they wanted to bring that silver back to the Iberian Peninsula. And one of the things that did happen, we're not going to cover this here, but a lot of that silver that they brought back to Spain caused inflation because that was akin to increasing the money supply, all that silver flowing back into Spain. But one of the things they did also was they started to realize that they could mint coins. There was a lot of gold also at the time in these areas in South America, in Central America, in Mexico, which is actually in North America, was that they started La Casa de Moneda de Mexico, which was the original mint, oldest mint now in the New World or the Western Hemisphere, and it's still in existence today. It was founded in 1535, and they were minting coins from the gold and silver. Some of them were being shipped back, but they were also using them for commerce here or in the Western Hemisphere. Now, the Spanish dollar, or the pieces of 8, they began to produce that around 1600. And it weighed 0.883125 troy ounces and was 93% silver. I don't know why they picked that, but that's what it was. And that was the standard coin, the pieces of 8. And it was used in commerce in Spain, but not just in Spain and in the New World, but for international trade, because it was a trusted standard unit of account. They knew it came from Casa de Moneda de Mexico. They knew it was 93% silver. It was highly recognized, and it was being used all over the world. And here's the difference. The piece of 8 was trusted not because the government said it is a denarius, so be it. It was because, and there was no promise, but it was because it came from the mint and because it had the standard weight and the standard purity that everyone relied upon. Indeed, this coin was so relied upon and so trusted that it was considered legal tender in the United States until 1857. Now, in 1857, the United States had already had a mint for the longest period of time. The United States had a functioning mint starting in 1792. But they decided that the piece of 8 was such an accepted unit of account that it was considered legal tender. And then finally, in 1857, they decided to just continue with minting their own coins and making the U.S. coinage the only legal tender in the United States. So during the Revolutionary period, during the War of 1812, leading up to the period of almost to the Civil War, people would use and trade the pieces of 8. All right, that's just a big, short history lesson. I thought you might enjoy that. I will put some links to, I've done some research on the decline and fall of the world's first silver empire, which is the Roman Empire, and then some pictures I put together of the pieces of 8, which you don't see right now, but that was considered, I think, a global standard that people used, the pieces of 8. All right, let's see if we've had any questions or comments in the chat box here. All right, let's see. What up, Centurion Silver? Oh, good to see you. Cash for flow. Plata is money in Spanish. Yep. Barbara Carbone says, hi, Smaulgld. Hello, Barbara. And then I said, buy your Smaulgld mug at smaulgld.com. Yeah, I shipped out another batch of them this morning, and I will go again tomorrow. I don't have any orders in right now, but if I get any, I will head out tomorrow and ship those. I've also opened the Smaulgld store where you can order Smaulgld branded merchandise, and that'll be delivered direct from the manufacturer, so I won't have to make post office trips. There you can get t-shirts, a lot of office supplies like erasers, pens, post-its. You can even get a corkscrew, a Smaulgld corkscrew, so check that out. It does help out the website. You like that ad for the mug. Hubzilla, were you a history teacher before law school? No, but I was a school teacher. I definitely was a school teacher before I went to law school. Still sounds like he's a teacher. You can't get rid of that didactic delivery, I suppose. Flight 19, silver price, $15.50. Oh, giving us an update. Let's see what I got here on the KitGo. I got $15.46 bid, $15.56 ask. Okay, Hubzilla, res ipsa loquitur. That means the thing speaks for itself in Latin. Silver in pieces of 8 for money. Yep. Mercury in retrograde. Your life is about to turn into... Now, what is that? July 25th, 2018. Please elaborate. Flight 19. All right, well, if we don't have any more comments or questions... Oh, Barbara agrees with it. I don't know what you're agreeing to. Someone please elaborate what we're talking about. Mercury in retrograde. Sounds like some type of astronomy. Hang on tight. Uh-oh. Oh, isn't this something to do with the blood moon coming up? I haven't been following that. I never follow that stuff. Probably, maybe to my detriment. Not sure. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow. We do a live stream every night at 8 o'clock, different topic. So thanks for joining. Going to the Silver Gold Summit. Which one is that? The Silver Gold Summit. I've never been to any of these. There's one out in Vancouver that Sprott puts on that I've never gone to. I haven't gone to any of these summits. I saw it was somewhat disappointing. I think it was First Financial, the one that Keith Neumeyer runs, the mining, he buys mining companies that are not working at the time. They're either exploratory with the idea that he's going to sell them. And they showed a picture of, they said, oh, we're here at this conference, and the picture showed like 8 people in an auditorium listening to a speaker. So not so much interest nowadays in precious metals. That probably will change at some point. We're seeing some stirrings now in the U.S. Mint numbers. Relatively strong gold sales the last 2 months at the U.S. Mint. About 25,000 American Gold Eagles sold, 1 ounce size, about 20,000 of the American Gold Buffaloes. It's not a tremendous amount, but it's far more than the 1 or 2 or 3,000 they were selling. Silver sales at the U.S. Mint still under $1 million a month. I generally see that gold, both in price and sales, break out first, and then silver follow. So we'll see if that is the case. It's what every man should have. It's funny. The pieces of 8 lasted almost the whole slave period in the United States. Coincidence or conspiracy? No, that's a very good observation. Yes, you could argue that the entire, well, it was imperialism. You had the Spanish, the French, all the English, all coming to the New World and exploiting its resources. And part of that exploitation was not just the exploitation of the mines, which they clearly were using slaves for in South America, but also in the United States they were exploiting not mines, but they were exploiting labor in the form of slavery for cotton. And yes, the monetary system around that does coincide very neatly what every man should have. That's a very good observation. And yes, 1857 was pretty much the end. Remember, slavery had been starting to slow down at that point. I don't think slavery ended in Brazil till like 1888, but that's a very good observation that the introduction into the New World, once they got commerce up and running and they had control and dominion over large portions of the lands of the New World. That's right. That was the currency of that period. In San Fran in October. I know there's a Litecoin conference in September in San Francisco as well. Time to buy for sure. Why not 8, not 6? You know, a 2-bit cigar would be a 1/3 cigar. That wouldn't make sense. I think that's why they did the pieces of 8. Not sure why they had it divided into 8. I could check on that. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening, and don't forget to pick up your Smaulgld mugs, because mugs are hard assets, and mugs can never go to zero. Thanks for listening.